You can't win. You can't bargain. You can't escape. All you can do is watch as your memories turn to dust. I don't believe in ghosts. My job is to impart knowledge, facts, hard truths of the world. I don't have time for fairy tales. That's why when rumors began circulating about a haunted house at the end of the street, I didn't pay it any mind. It wasn't like I was scared of ghosts. I just had better things to worry about, like how my dog disappeared while walking around the new house. It appeared overnight. One day the for sale sign was there. The next, it was gone, replaced by a wrought iron fence and an imposing brick facade. None of us could remember it being built. It seemed to materialize out of nowhere. No one knew who owned it. There were no lights on in the windows, but every night we heard them flick on one by one until the entire facade blazed with an eerie yellow glow. Then every morning when the sun came up, the lights were gone and the house seemed a little closer than it was the day before. My dog, Scout, disappeared 3 weeks after the house went up. One minute he was sniffing around the perimeter of the yard, the next he was gone. The police didn't bother looking for it. My neighbor said maybe he'd found a new home with a new family, but I knew something had taken him. Something was off about this street. Something was off about the house. And then I saw it. One afternoon I was grading papers in my backyard and I noticed a girl staring at me from behind the house's overgrown hedges. She looked about 8 years old, freckled-faced and curious. I smiled at her and she waved, but when I got up to see her better, she was gone. I told myself it was the heat. It was summer, after all, and I hadn't had any coffee yet. The next week I was woken in the middle of the night by scratching at my window. When I opened it I saw a boy. He was the same age as my younger brother, Kevin, who died in a car accident 10 years ago. This boy looked exactly like it. He stared at me for a second, then walked past me and into my house. I called out to him, but he didn't answer. I wanted to follow him, but I was afraid. So I stood frozen at the window watching him walk away. In the morning I told my husband Mark about the boy. He said probably best not to read too much into it. If anything, it's a good thing. Maybe you should be more open-minded. I've always been a skeptic, but seeing Kevin, if only for a moment, left me shaken. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was happening here, and I couldn't help but wonder if Scout had ended up there too. No one else seemed to care. They were too busy gawking at the house. Now, gossip was all anyone could talk about. Someone finally found out who owned the house, Mr. Alistair Finch. Apparently he'd bought it at auction for a suspiciously low price. Some people even claimed to have seen him, a gaunt man with wild eyes and an air of permanent melancholy. But he kept to himself in the house, and no one had laid eyes on him in months. Then one day, the for rent sign went up. Everyone assumed Mrs. Finch planned to rent out the house, but no one applied. We watched the house with fascination as the weeks passed. First the grass was cut, then the windows were cleaned. Soon, furniture began to appear on the porch. One evening Mark looked at me, his face grave. He said, "It's time." I knew what he meant. We had to see the house, see what was going on inside. It was the only way to find out what happened to Scout. That night, while everyone was asleep, we crept into the house through an unlocked window. Inside, everything was shrouded in darkness. We couldn't see each other in the dark. So I fumbled for my phone, turned on the flashlight and began exploring. The house was a labyrinth of empty rooms and silent halls. I felt my heart beating in my throat. I called out for Scout, but there was no answer. We found a bathroom, but no bathtub. Instead, there was a sink and a toilet and a floor drain, a shower head mounted on the wall. It was huge, enough for a person to fit inside, but there was no door. It was just a hole in the wall. I showed it to Mark. He agreed it was strange. And together we stepped over the threshold and entered the shower. It wasn't cold. The water that hit our skin was scalding hot. I screamed and stumbled back, knocking my phone out of my hand. I felt panic rising in my chest as I tried to find my phone in the pitch black. Where was Mark? What if something got him? I finally found my phone and shone the light around the shower. It was empty. I ran to the door, threw it open and called for Mark, but there was no answer. I raced through the house again, calling his name, but he was gone. I felt tears pricking at my eyes. What if I never saw him again? What if I never saw Scout again? But something was wrong. The house wasn't right. It twisted around me as I moved through it, changing shape and form. It was a puzzle with mismatched pieces. I explored further, trying to make sense of it, and found a basement with a single bulb dangling from the ceiling. Its light revealed peeling paint, exposed wiring, and a musty carpet. And then I saw it, a set of stairs leading downwards. Cautiously I made my way over. Each step creaked ominously, and as I descended, the air grew colder. The stairs opened up into a vast cavern filled with shadows. I gasped, my breath catching in my throat. I shone my phone's light around me, but it did little to pierce the oppressive gloom. The space stretched endlessly in all directions, and I could hear a faint dripping sound echoing in the distance. As I continued deeper into the basement, the air grew thick with a metallic scent, like the smell of blood. I stumbled over something in the darkness and fell forward. I cried out, scrambling backwards. In the dim light, I could make out the shape of a person lying on the floor. I rushed over and knelt beside them. It was Mark. His eyes were wide and staring, and his skin was as white as snow, but he was breathing. "Mark," I whispered, relief flooding through me. "Mark, it's me." He blinked slowly, his gaze unfocused. "What's happening?" I asked. But he didn't answer. He just stared straight ahead, his eyes empty. Suddenly a low growl echoed in the basement. Mark stiffened, his eyes widening in terror. "Run," he whispered urgently. "Don't look back." I didn't need to be told twice. I scrambled to my feet and fled, the growl echoing behind me. I ran and ran, but the house never ended. It just kept going on forever. I tripped and fell, scraping my hands on the concrete floor. But I didn't dare stop, not daring to look back. I ran blindly, the growling getting louder, closer. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I collapsed against a wall, gasping for breath. When I looked back, Mark was gone, and now neither he nor the house was anywhere to be found. The growling had led me outside, and somehow I was back on my own street. I looked down and saw my hands were covered in blood. They weren't mine. They were Scout's. Days passed, and still I couldn't get the house out of my mind. I scoured online records, property deeds, building permits, anything to get to the bottom of this. And finally I found it, a faded blueprint marked Private Residence, Sector 7, Level 3. I followed the schematic, found that the third level of the house was mapped out exactly like my childhood home. That's when I realized what was happening here. The house feeds off memory, identity. It steals them and makes them its own. It replicates the most important places in our lives to lure us in, to trap us, and now it was coming for me. I looked out the window and saw the house standing at the end of the street, closer than ever. It beckoned to me, promising answers, offering comfort, but I knew better than to go near it. I locked my doors and windows, boarded them up. I pulled down the shades and turned off the lights, desperate to hide from whatever was out there, but it was too late. The house had already found me. I tried to run, to hide, but there was no escape. The house stretched out its cold, dead branches and wrapped them around me, pulling me towards it, towards the darkness. In the final moments of my life, I understood what the house really was. It wasn't a place. It was a living thing. It was alive and it was hungry.